We're here at Indigo Asian Antiques, the most impressive showroom in the UK for Asian antiques. And it's in Pewsey in Wiltshire, which is a bit of a surprise. You'd expect something like this perhaps to be in London. But it's an absolutely fascinating place. They've got works from across Asia, India, China, Korea, Japan. It's a pretty extensive collection. As soon as you walk in, you're just struck with the detailing and the colors. The colors are really rich, really vibrant. They really pop. So when VMware came to me and said, we'd like to get your take on Tanzu and the launch that we're going to do, I didn't know that I was going to go on this story, this metaphorical journey, but indeed I was. So what is Tanzu? On the one hand, Tanzu is a Swahili word meaning branch. That's very fitting for modern open source software delivery. We've got the notions of branches. We've got pipelines. Software delivery is absolutely the way we do this stuff. And of course, distributions in open source. But Tanzu is also Japanese cabinetry. It is these beautiful boxes like the one that's here. And this is just fantastic. And I think the thing for me that sort of really resonates is the notion of if we've got a modern architecture for containers and container management in the shape of Tanzu, then, hey, look, what are these pieces of cabinetry if not modular containers for moving things around? If you look at the different Tanzu pieces in a showroom like this, there's a surprising amount of similarity of pattern, and you can almost imagine stacking them up one on top of the other, even if they weren't actually made for that. But as a whole, it's secure, it's lightweight, it is somewhat modular, it is about moving things from place to place. And what you're really thinking about is that Tanzu was containers before we had containers. You really want something that is managed and packaged for you, and I think that's the key. I've seen so many enterprises out there and they're trying to build things themselves and they're coming unstuck. And they're not really getting the full advantages out of Kubernetes. So we need to be thinking about, can we take those skills and actually, re-energize the notion of some specialization? The platform team needs platform tools. The dev team needs dev tools. Ops people have a particular way of looking at the world. And whilst absolutely you do want DevOps and you do want multidisciplinary teams, that's not to say that everything is the same for everybody. Certainly, not everybody needs to understand every single part in order to deploy apps on Kubernetes. I guess the way to think about this is, you don't need to be able to develop it in order to be able to use it. Now, moving into an environment where getting someone else to manage this for you, getting somebody else to take away the complexity, that's what we need in modern infrastructure. That's opinionated infrastructure. And that's kind of where we are with Tanzu. It's making decisions on your behalf. And I think enterprises are going to respond to that because Kubernetes has been really, really challenging to get the value out of. And now I want to take you through to another room, actually, because it's one thing to have all of these beautiful antiques, but anybody that's involved in selling antiques is generally also involved in restoration. And that balance between taking an old thing and refreshing it, I think kind of speaks to questions of application modernization and skills. And so here we've got this workshop where they do a lot of the restoration of these pieces of furniture. I was talking to Tom, the owner, and he was talking about this piece, which I think is interesting because if we think about application modernization, it's like, how far do we have to go, right? What should we leave as is? And what should we refactor? What should we make different? Do we want to take this excellent, beautiful piece of legacy furniture or a legacy application and just sand it down completely flat? Or do we think about the detailing here? Perhaps there's a piece of incense that's left as burn mark. There's this patina here. This is all to do with the character of the wood and understanding the character of the wood. And I think thinking about the craft of application modernization, you're really in a position where you have to make trade-offs. You don't want to go in and smash everything down. you might initially start with some lifting and shifting. Take this into the workshop and see what the asset is, see what we should be doing with it. Do we want to sand this down? If so, how much? What is the user interface like? What exactly is the granularity of the service that we need to think about? Obviously, they're not making the cabinets, but this restoration story, in many cases, is what we want to do with our enterprise legacy workloads. Because obviously, you're going to build new apps. Everybody wants to build those new, stateless, 12-factor applications. But the simple fact is, most of our application estate in the enterprise is not like that. It's more like these antiques. So talking of treasures, talking of heritage, talking of legacy, it's time for a bit of a reveal. And I would say this is our Raiders of the Lost Ark moment. This workshop goes into this incredible warehouse. If you're interested in Asian cabinetry, this is definitely your happy place. It is absolutely beautiful in here. And to me, I think that this idea of like, how do we modernize, and the idea of containers being at the heart of application modernization in the enterprise is really interesting, because this is the approach that people have taken. We're standardizing on containers. We're standardizing on Kubernetes. And in that sort of environment, actually, we're going to be able to have all sorts of weird and interesting and beautiful different legacy technologies, and we're going to sort of manage them in the same kinds of ways. These are a couple of my favorite Tansu boxes in the workshop. This is designed to be portable, this one here, very beautiful. This Kurama Tansu is something you would have a piece of furniture you wouldn't always move, but sometimes you have to do some heavy lifting. You want to attach a chain and really pull it and really get that up into the cloud. Around the corner here, we could really see this notion of containers coming together. So these two Tansu were not designed to fit together initially or originally, but they do. The fitting works there, the fitting works here, and this is absolutely classic. You open it up, oh yeah, that's where I want to be putting my microservices. When we think about the skills that we're going to need to manage these large-scale Kubernetes infrastructures, there are a lot of challenges there. And sometimes, quite frankly, Kubernetes at scale can be like trying to catch a tiger by the tail. So what are we going to do? We've been in this episode or this era of full stack. You've got people that are using Kubernetes are the people that are frankly writing Kubernetes. And this is the way it used to be with Linux back in the olden days. Everyone's doing their own builds. They're wanting to contribute to kernel. They're wanting to contribute, at some level into the shell or some other part of Linux. Frankly, you can't have all the people using the system actually building the system. And we're moving now, I think, a bit away from that. And we're going to start seeing more specialization. And that's where I think a technology company like VMware has a really interesting story to tell. Because look, they've done certification, they've done accreditation, they've done this notion of virtualization that can be managed by small teams for years. They've got an ecosystem for delivery that's just anxious to get out there and start pushing the next new technologies. And I think for me, if I'm frankly, a VMware certified engineer, I'm thinking, what am I going to do for the next 15 years as containers are happening? Well, part of the answer there is indeed that VMware is making this really solid play around Kubernetes. We can't have, and the enterprise can't afford all of those incredible Kubernetes experts that want to be doing Helm charts, that want to be in the CLI and so on. So who's going to provide that bridge? There are going to be, a few dominant ecosystems that emerge, and one of them I think is highly likely is going to be VMware.